Jack Sheppherd was the Harry Houdini of the 1700s. He escaped prison 5 times. He is known as the original Jack the Lad. Many poems, novels and plays are inspired by his adventures, as well as paintings. In this episode, I'll be exploring the life of this extraordinary little man, for little he was, and finding out how this ordinary boy turned to a life of crime. My name is April, and this is Gavel in the Grave. Sheppherd was born on the 4th of March 1702 to a very poor family. His father died when Sheppherd was only a little boy, and his sister Mary died in infancy. His eldest brother was sent to be a servant to a local woman.
Sheppherd himself was sent to the workhouse at the age of 6. Luckily for Jack, the workhouse of the early 18th century were far different places than the cold and callous establishments of the Victorian age.
Paupers were allowed to come and go at will, and they were often encouraged to find employment outside the workhouse. They sent Sheppherd to be an apprentice to a cane chair maker, where he received a salary of 20 shillings. However, his new master died. He was then sent to another cane chair maker, but was treated badly there. By the age of 10, he was working as a shop boy for a man named William Kneebone, who owned a wood draper's shop on the Strand. It did help that his mother was working for Kneebone since her husband's death. His mother taught him to read and write and eventually got him an apprenticeship as a carpenter to an Owen Wood who had a shop near Drury Lane. By 1722, Sheppherd was showing great promise as a carpenter.
By the age of 20, he was a man of small stature, his height being only 5'4", lightly built but deceptively strong. He had a pale complexion with dark eyes and a wide mouth that had a quick smile.
Despite having a slight stutter, he had a great wit, which made him popular in the taverns. He served 5 years of his 7 years apprenticeship to Wood, but soon after began his life of crime.
The Black Lion off Drury Lane was a tavern where local apprentices frequented.
However, it was also visited by criminals. Criminals such as Joseph Blueskin Blake, Sheppherd's future partner in crime, and self-proclaimed thief-taker general.
But it was also frequented by a man called Jonathan Wild, who secretly ran the criminal empire across London. This man would ultimately become Sheppherd's enemy.
Probably not the best one to make. Jack Sheppherd also wrote an autobiography,
which was actually ghostwritten by Daniel Defoe. In it, he states that he had been an innocent man until he began going to the Black Lion, where he started to get a taste of strong drink. He also became attached to the affections of a prostitute by the name of Elizabeth Lyons, also known as Edgeworth Bess. Sheppherd now threw himself into a hedonistic world of drinking and whoring, which made his carpentry suffer.
I imagine it would. He became disobedient to his master, but obedient to his mistress. Quite right too. Lyon encouraged him to a life of crime to top up his wages. His first recorded theft was in the spring of 1723, where he was engaged in petty shoplifting.
He stole 2 silver spoons whilst on an errand for his master to the Rummer Tavern at Charing Cross.
He quit his employment on the 2nd of August 1723, with only 2 years of his apprenticeship left, although he continued to work as a journeyman carpenter. He was never suspected of any of his crimes and soon progressed to burglary. He then moved to Fulham and lived as husband and wife with Lyons at Parsons Green, before moving to Piccadilly. Whilst there, Lyons got herself arrested.
She was taken to St Giles Roundhouse, but when Sheppherd attempted to visit, he was refused entry by the beadle and Mr Brown.
So Sheppherd simply broke in and took her away. So romantic. Sheppherd's first arrest was for burglary, along with his brother Tom and Lion, in Clare Market on the 5th of February 1724. Tom, who was also a carpenter, was already arrested once for stealing tools from his master, and was subsequently branded on his hand. Tom was arrested again the same year on the 24th of April. Because of his fear that he'd be hanged this time, he informed on Jack, and a warrant was issued for his arrest. So much for brotherly love. But then if I was going to be hanged, I would probably be doing the same. Now, Jonathan Wild was aware of Sheppherd's thefts, as Sheppherd fenced a few stolen goods through one of Wild's men. Wild then realised that he could make an extra bit of money by drawing Sheppherd into a trap and then betraying him to a constable. By doing this, he could collect the £40 reward for giving information that would lead to a conviction of a felon. Good thinking.
The trap was to get one of his men to challenge Sheppherd to a game of skittles at a place called the Red Gates Public House, near Seven Dials.
The ruse succeeded and Sheppherd was arrested. Now, this is where we come to Jack Shepherd's first daring escape.
The magistrate, Justice Perry, had Sheppherd imprisoned overnight on the top of St Giles' Roundhouse, pending further questioning. Within 3 hours, Sheppherd had escaped by breaking through the timber ceiling and lowering himself to the ground with a rope made from bedclothes.
Still wearing his irons, Sheppherd coolly joined the crowd that was attracted by the noise that he created. He distracted their attention by pointing to a shadow and shouting that he could see the escaped, and then quickly departed. Sheppherd was arrested the second time on the 19th of May, whilst being caught red-handed in the act of pickpocketing in Leicester Fields. He was detained overnight in St Anne's Roundhouse in Soho. The next day he was visited by Lyons, but she was then recognised as Sheppherd's wife and thrown into jail with him. They appeared before Justice Waters, who then sent them to the new prison in Clerkenwell. This is where Sheppherd and his mistress made his second brilliant escape.
In just shy of a week, they had filed through the manacles, removed a bar from the window, and used knotted bed sheets to lower themselves to the ground. Finding themselves in the yard of the neighbouring Bridewell prison, they then managed to scale the 22-foot gate to freedom.
This escape was widely publicised, not just because Sheppherd was a small man, but also because Lyons was a large and buxom woman. Sheppherd's thieving abilities were hugely admired by Wild, and Wild demanded that Sheppherd surrendered his goods to him to get a greater profit. Sheppherd, funny enough, refused to do this and decided to work along with Blueskin Blake. They burgled Sheppherd's former master. That really annoyed Wild because he wanted to control such a good thief. So once again, he sought for Sheppherd's arrest.
After Sheppherd and Blueskin tried their hand at being highwaymen on Hampstead Road, Field told Wild about Sheppherd.
Wild now realised to find where Sheppherd was, he would need to find someone who did. And that person was most likely to be Lion.
So he plied her with drink until she betrayed him.
Sheppherd was arrested the third time at Blueskin's mother's brandy shop in Rosemary Lane on the 23rd of July.
Sheppherd was imprisoned in Newgate Prison pending his trial. He was prosecuted on 3 charges of theft at the Old Bailey, but was acquitted on the first 2 charges due to lack of evidence.
Kneebone, Wild and Field gave evidence against him on the 3rd charge of burgling Kneebone's house.
He was convicted and sentenced to death.
But on the 31st of August, on the same day that his death warrant arrived from court, setting his execution date for the 4th of September, what do you think Sheppherd did? He sat and prayed for hours. No, not a chance. He escaped for the third time.
Having loosened a bar in a window used when speaking to visitors, his small frame allowed him to squeeze through the resulting gap. Whilst Lion, and a woman with a very unfortunate name, a Pole Maggot, distracted the guard, he was then smuggled out of Newgate in women's clothing.
He then took a coach to Blackfriars Stairs, and from there took a boat up the River Thames to the Horse Ferry in Westminster, near to where the warehouse was where he hid his stolen goods, and made good his escape.
By this time, Sheppherd was a hero to a section of the population, because he was cockney, non-violent, and seemingly able to escape punishment at will.
He spent a few days outside London in Hamptonshire while visiting friends, but he soon returned. He evaded capture by Wilde and his men, but was arrested again on the 9th of September by a posse from Newgate as he was hiding out on Finchley Common. He soon returned to the condemned cell of Newgate Jail.
With each escape attempt, Sheppherd's fame increased, and he was visited in his cells by the great, the good, and the curious. His plans to escape in September were thwarted when the guard found files and other tools in his cell, and he was transferred to a strong room known as the Castle, clapped in leg irons and chains into metal staples in the floor to prevent further escape attempts.
However, Sheppherd decided to show off a bit to the guards by demonstrating how he could use a small nail to unlock the horse padlock, and so was bound more tightly and handcuffed. Why he did this, I'm not sure, but there you go. Meanwhile, Blueskin Blake was arrested by Wilde and his men on the 9th of October. During his trial, Wilde and Field gave evidence, and although their evidence was not consistent, Blake was found guilty.
An enraged Blueskin Blake then attacked Wilde in the courtroom, slashing his throat with a pocket knife, causing a massive uproar. Wilde actually survived the attack, but during his recuperation, his grip over his criminal enterprise began to loosen. The uproar caused in court by Blueskin's antics spread to the prison, which was next door to the courthouse, and continued into the night.
Sheppherd now took advantage of this and escaped for the fourth time from one of London's most notorious prisons. This was one of his most incredible escapes.
He managed to unlock his handcuffs and remove chains. Still encumbered by his leg irons, he tried to climb the chimney, but an iron bar had been set into the brickwork. He removed this iron bar and used it to break through the ceiling into the red room above the castle. Still wearing his leg irons, as night fell, he broke through no less than 6 barred doors into the prison chapel, and then onto the roof of Newgate, which was 60 feet above the ground. So what did he do? He went all the way back to the cell to get bed sheets to lower himself to the roof of the adjacent house. He broke into this house, went down the stairs and out into the street, making his way through the street to the northwest. Sheppherd hid himself in a cowshed in Tottenham.
Unbelievable!
When the cowshed's owner spotted him, he managed to persuade the man he had escaped from Bridewell prison for not supporting a bastard son. His leg iron remained in place for several days until he persuaded a passing shoemaker to bring tools and help him remove them. His manacles and leg irons were later found in the rooms of Kate Cook, one of Sheppherd's mistresses.
This final period of liberty lasted 2 weeks. He disguised himself as a beggar and returned to the city. He then broke into a pawnbroker's shop in Drury Lane
and took a black suit, a silver sword, rings, watches, a wig and other items. He dressed himself up like a dandy and used the proceeds to spend the day and a lovely night on the tiles with 2 of his mistresses. He was arrested for the final time in the early morning of the 1st of November, blind drunk.
So this time, Sheppherd was placed in the middle stone room, which was in the middle of Newgate. which was next door to the castle where he could be observed at all times. He was also loaded with 300-pound iron weights.
He was by this time so celebrated that the jailers in charge would charge visitors of high society 4 shillings to come and see him. The king's painter James Thornhill even painted his portrait. Several people sent petitions to the king asking that his death sentence to be commuted to a transportation.
Sheppherd came before the King's Bench at Westminster Hall on the 10th of November. The judge was Augustus Powers. Powers then offered Sheppherd a deal to reduce his sentence if he informed on his associates, but he refused the offer and the death sentence was confirmed. The next day, Blueskin was hanged and Sheppherd was moved to the condemned cell.
The following Monday, the 16th of November, Sheppherd went to the gallows at Tyburn and was hanged.
He had planned for one more escape, but the penknife he planned to use to cut his bonds was found by the warder shortly before his trip to Tyburn.
The procession on the road to Tyburn was as much as a celebration of Sheppherd's life than his death, with 200,000 people attending. It stopped at the City of Oxford Tavern on Oxford Street for a drink.
When mounting the scaffold, Sheppherd's official autobiography was being sold to the crowds.
His slight build, which once aided him in his prison escapes, now condemned him to a slow death by strangulation. Once he was hanged for the customary 15 minutes, his body was cut down. At this point, the crowd pressed forward to stop his body being removed for dissection.
However, this unfortunately stopped a plan by his friends to have his body taken to a doctor in hopes to revive him. His badly mauled remains were recovered later and were buried in St. Martin's in the Field later that evening. Sheppherd's exploits caused an incredible public reaction. They loved him.
His adventures were written about in broadsheets and newspapers, pamphlets and ballads, and his story was soon and probably inevitably adapted for the stage. The most famous play written about his life is John Gray's The Beggar's Opera, which was written in 1728. Sheppherd was the inspiration for the main character Macheath, while his nemesis Peachum was inspired by Jonathan Wild. The play became extremely popular and had been performed regularly for over 100 years. It was the basis for the Threepenny Opera in 1928. Sheppherd may also have inspired the artist Hogarth to create the series of 12 engravings titled Industry and Idleness.
So there you have it, the story of Jack Sheppherd. Thanks for watching, folks. In this episode, I'll be I'm finding out how this ordinary boy turned to a life of crime. The next day, Blueskin was hanged and Sheppherd was condemned to the cell. I wasn't ready.